90% of civilization probably lives like this, and they have no idea the connection with the environment or the lack of connection with the environment the way they're living, but the harm that they're doing to the environment and how unsustainable that is in the long term. Humans are destroying the planet far faster than any of this stuff can break down. I want to leave this planet in a better shape than I found it, at least from my interactions with it. I want to leave the next generations behind me in a better state than I'm in. That's kind of the two things that keep me going. And of course, the third thing is I like to have fun. We only are here for a short amount of time. Let's enjoy it and let's make it meaningful. Think about your business with a triple bottom line. Think about the alignment that you can create with staff and with customers by bringing a bit of a sense of purpose. Hey, we're going to not only perform well, but we're also a force for good that is going to leave a positive mark on this planet.
Welcome back to Care Beyond Profits. I'm Azura Ali. In this episode, I'm joined by Dave Rouse. Dave is the co-founder and CEO of CarbonClick. He is a philanthropic entrepreneur who has dedicated his life to helping people and businesses care for the planet. Dave has founded and exited over a dozen companies, and he co-founded a company called Sea Cleaners, which has removed more than 200 shipping containers of plastics from our oceans. He has represented New Zealand at the last 5 UN Climate COP events as a New Zealand delegate. This episode shares his personal journey on leading purpose-led businesses. If you enjoy this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to Care Beyond Profits. Let's dive into it. Dave, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
You're most welcome. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. I would love to start off with a little bit about you. And instead of asking you the standard question, today I really want to start with your 3 key values. If you could share that with us, please.
3 key values. Okay, so from my perspective, I guess I want to leave this planet in a better shape than I found it, at least from my interactions with it. And I want to leave, the next generations behind me in a better state than than I'm in. So that's kind of the 2 things that keep me going. And of course, the third thing is I like to have fun. So we only are here for a short amount of time. Let's enjoy it and let's make it meaningful.
Thanks, Dave. And getting into a little bit more about you. So what is it that you do and what drives your passion for it?
So what I do is, I guess, sustainable business growth, and the way that often business works is that it's mutually exclusive with leaving the planet in a better place, and I want to try and change the narrative there, and so I've always been attracted to businesses that will be able to leave a positive imprint behind in 3 key areas, so environmentally, socially, as well as financially. And that's what's led me to the current project that I've been working on for the last 5 years, which is CarbonClick. And I was an investor looking to support and sit on the boards of great Kiwi startups that were doing these good things that would help fix what's wrong with our world. CarbonClick needed a CEO to start off with, and so I put my hand up to say, let's not wait. I'll fill the gap, and we can recruit a CEO later. We started the business just before COVID, and of course, when COVID happened, the main market for CarbonClick was the airline, followed closely by airport market, and all of that market was turned upside down in an unprecedented event that none of us have experienced in our lifetimes. So that meant I had to stay with the business, and 5 years later, I've sort of become the face of it.
How did you get into this? So in your younger days, was there something that drove you towards what you're doing today?
Yeah, so when I was young, I remember I grew up out in the bush, out in the Waitākeres. Really healthy lifestyle. I wasn't aware of any other lifestyles, and we had to live sustainably because we didn't have all of the services that you might come to expect with a city. We collected our own water and had our own, but semi off grid, I guess you could say. But it was inconvenient to have plastic rubbish, so we tended to not buy things, either toys or things from the supermarket that would produce waste that we couldn't deal with. And then when I was at intermediate school, maybe 10 or 11 years old, we did a field trip to the refuse centre, which is, waste and recycling. And I remember, we walked up the road and the stream leading away from it was absolutely, it looked like a toxic mess. There were dead animals around it. It stunk, and there was a bit of an oil slick on it. And I just thought, well, that's all washing out to sea. That's disgusting. And then you got closer to the tip and you see it's full of things like disposable nappies and single-use plastic, like chip packets and things like that from multi-pack chips and things. And really it was a eye-opener that the rest of civilization, or 90% of civilization, probably lives like this. And they have no idea the connection with the environment, or the lack of connection with the environment the way they're living, but the harm that they're doing to the environment and how unsustainable that is in the long term. I mean, you look at the size of the tip, and I just remember thinking, gosh, this is happening all over the place. They can't reuse that land. It's just a rubbish dump. So really, humans are destroying the planet far faster than any of this stuff can break down. And so that made me hyper conscious of it and started looking at more environmental challenges, air pollution. And I just went from one thing to another. Through school, I was very interested in science, and, even at university, very much studied science subjects and engineering, I guess, which you could say is partially science. But I was always keen to understand the way that the world works, and how we're stuffing up our planet in so many different ways. I was very entrepreneurial and also wanted to get into business. So really, that was where I started. I did some other things along the way, piloting and that sort of thing. But I guess you could say it's become ingrained in me since that turning point when I was at intermediate school, that we're all stuffing up our planet and we're turning a blind eye to it, and we'll run out of land at some point and it will be right in front of us.
That's beautiful. And was there anything in your family environment that shaped some of your thoughts and values in this?
Yeah, absolutely. So my mother was a naturopath, and so, all of our diet was very natural growing up. We were very healthy. We never had really time off school, other than, I had measles once and mumps once, but we never once were off school for a common cold. And the way that my mother lived in kind of very much in harmony with our bodies and with nature was sustainable at a health level, but also at a planet level. We had healthy soils and healthy crops and things like that. But my father, who was kind of polar opposite, was a successful businessman. He was a merchant banker, and then went on to buy and on sell a couple of businesses that did very well, very entrepreneurial. So I had two very opposite influences on my life, and I guess I came out with quite a balanced perspective.
I love that. It seems like you took both and combined it together in your own journey. Was there anything in terms of when you were growing up? You mentioned your mum was a naturopath. Was there any moments that stood out for you from your childhood that would look back now and say, hey, that was one turning point in my life that took the part that you did now?
I guess it was probably going to intermediate school, where we'd gone from a small country school where none of us wore shoes, and we were sent to school with a pair of sandals, but they were never seen on our feet. and, running around and happy and healthy, to a more crammed metropolitan type of environment that I felt like a fish out of water. And I guess it was a shock to the system for me that how these people had to live and had grown up living. It made me really appreciate where I'd come from, the importance of maybe reconnecting people with that nature that I had a connection with as a kid. The tree climbing, the bushwalks, all of that. And I used to try and share that with all of my friends. Let's go hiking in the weekends and get out in the great outdoors instead of playing video games. And, I was able to influence my friend circle around me, and we would have a lot more fun being in the great outdoors. New Zealand is a lovely place, and a lot of us don't get out and appreciate it enough. So yeah, that was, I guess, all of my childhood. I spent my weekends working on a farm out in Clevedon, which I now own all these years later. And that was also a fantastic upbringing from a work perspective, just learning how the land works. It was an organic farm, sheep and beef, and very holistic. They respected very much the soil, and the health of the soil is ultimately the success of the farm. And they had a big influence on me as well, as far as how do you have a totally sustainable circular economy when it comes to our food.
I love that. I want to pick on a little bit of the points that you just mentioned, especially around your childhood and being out in the garden and always being in the bushes and things, because nowadays a lot of the issues that you hear is around video games and constant social media. And so just pivoting to that, is there some practices that you do personally now that helps you stay grounded to some of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I should be taking some of my own advice here, but at times in my life, I have been very good at meditation and yoga practices. I played piano as well, which was another good way to, I guess, engage left and right brain and take yourself out of a situation and come back to it afterwards. But certainly the meditation in the morning, some people call it micro meditation. I only did 10 minutes of it every morning, and I only did about 20 minutes of yoga every morning. That set me up for the day with a really clear mind. And I would live each day quite purposefully. I was very goal oriented. So I would think about what I wanted to achieve for that day and make sure that, you've all heard the analogy, the rocks that go in the jar and then the sand that goes in around the rocks and then the water that goes in around the sand. I would always start my day with the three big things, or the three rocks in the jar. And I wouldn't even check my emails until maybe 11 o'clock in the morning. I would spend those first 2 or 3 hours in the morning just trying to achieve the goals of the day, and then you get caught up in the normal cycles of business as usual. But that's been helpful for me as far as being able to achieve more than I otherwise would. And of course, I bring all my values into that as well.
And how do you balance all that? So you're the CEO, you're running businesses, and often people have competing priorities, whether it's family, whether it's spirituality, community. So how, in your mind and in your own life, are you juggling those balls?
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, I really value my friends. I really value my family, and I really value my work. But by the time you've got a girlfriend, you've got kids, and you've got your friends, spending enough time, quality time with each of them, as well as having a mission that you're on, and the travel associated with that sometimes and so on, that is really difficult. And I always put myself last, to try and maintain those friendships, those family connections, make sure that my kids are okay. Because I often have, when I've exited a business, I kind of get that me time then. And I'll often take 3 months off or 6 months off, and then I can go and do lots more me things. And that sort of typically has happened every 2 or 3 years for me. And that way I can keep my eye on the ball, make sure the business is successful, as well as looking after all of the people around me that I care about, my friendships, my family.
I love that. And to those listening, what does your core family unit look like at the moment?
I've got an 11-year-old son, a 5-year-old daughter. The 11-year-old son lives with me and my partner. 5-year-old daughter, I have alternate weekends and school holidays, and that's I love that. It's we have a lot of fun together. I try and minimize any screen time. The 5-year-old doesn't get any screen time at all, so that's easy to do when you're only doing it, alternate weekends and holidays, but it's a bit harder to do day to day. When I have evening calls and things like that. So my 10-year-old gets away with a bit of it. 11-year-old now.
Love that. It's always a constant juggle. I want to divert into the area of leadership. In terms of your own leadership, how did you start in your process and your journey? What was your first memory of your leadership role?
Probably, my first journey in my leadership role again was back in high school when I was quite entrepreneurial and entered, they had Lion Nathan business challenges and things like that, entrepreneurship challenges. And I was so excited about it that I would have to drag all of my friends along with me for the ride, bribe them or whatever with giving them the chocolate out of my lunch or anything like that I could find to get them in. They enjoyed it, but I was always the ringleader because I had that, that desire, that sense of purpose and that passion for innovation in business. So from a leadership perspective, I guess it was more project management style leadership, where I knew that I needed the team around me. Otherwise, it wasn't going to happen. I knew that they probably didn't really want to be there. They were doing it because they were good, or I was rewarding them, or something like that. But I found, the sense of glory at the end of it when we would win things and get recognition was a really positive way to influence those around me to do it again the next time, and it became a bit more self-sustaining. And then when I got into business, it was more a case of I liked the business, I liked what it was doing, I liked the customer base and the product. The team is always a struggle at the start because you've got to get what are people's motivators, and how do you get more out of a team? How do you get the team to be part of the purpose and not part of the turn up at 9, leave at 5, collect the paycheck, and not really care about what they're doing during the day? I kind of found most people to be fairly coin operated. So I found money an easy way to quickly tackle the team I needed around me, and I would cut them in on the profit margins of the business. So everybody had a profit share in basically every business that I've been a part of. And then I would also show them in detail how the business makes a profit and where their part is and why their part in that machine that is a business is so important. So the individual that was getting, not just wages, but at the end of the year, a bonus, that was enough of a carrot to make them care more, make them learn about the business, make them spot others that were not performing because they understood more holistically how the business was working as well as their place in it. So that's probably the most important aspect is learning that people chase the money. It's pretty basic. But then you can start instilling other values and showing them why they should be caring about sustainability, why they should be caring about this and that. And you can, once you've got them on board and you're able to influence them and they like you and they're resonating, and you know, I would have regular monthly performance meetings with all of my teams so that I could show them, what does this mean for them? How are they performing towards their bonus? In something really clear, what's in it for me perspective. And then I'd just bite-sized chunk, bring in the morals and so on and say, hey, you know, we should be winning business awards. Let's apply for those next year. We're going to have customers that think that we're rock stars. What can we do that's better than all of our competitors so that our customers fall in love with us? And what can we do for the environment? Because a lot of our customers care about that too. But we want to be winning awards for being the most environmentally innovative company in the spaces that we are, and being seen as leaders. So I guess I would take them on that journey, but I always found if I started with the environmental perspective in an engineering type business, they'd just look funny and I'd lose their respect. So I had to work through that process of gaining their respect, making them understand their place in the business, making them understand what's in it for them by working together and caring about their job, and then bring in the sustainability and social aspects to it.
I love your approach on just looking at the whole thing holistically, because I think it's very easy when you have a purpose to drive right to the point that you're chasing and forget what others around you actually need and want.
One other thing just to touch on that briefly is that, you know, it was always easy to attract staff that were purpose driven, that already understood sustainability, but I struggled with them. You know, they were no good at sales often and so on. So I would have to get the best people at the job and then educate them and bring them up to speed on the sustainability journey rather than the other way around.
Love that. And in terms of how you developed it over time, was there something that you wish you'd known when you got started that you know now?
Yeah, I mean, that I had a lot of learnings around, you know, all my environmental champion friends wanted to be in business with me and so on, but I didn't know how to train them in, you know, 12 different roles within a business, how to be good at marketing, how to be good at sales and so on. Even though they had the degrees, they certainly weren't performers in their elements. So I took on the wrong people early on. Instead of, it was because I understand and live and breathe sustainability, that was what was really easy for me to train in, you know, the most redneck type of roles that you could imagine, CFO type roles, where, you know, I had some really pale male stale kind of great CFOs brought into businesses that just, you know, they're driving big gas guzzlers and, you know, they just had no part of their DNA had ever been educated on sustainability. And of that generation, you know, my parents' generation, that this is just socks and jandals kind of territory. But I found that was always the best result to get the businesses financially performing well, and operationally performing really well, is having the best people for those roles, and educating them on what I could educate them on. And we were able to influence them significantly. We would do volunteer days where they would see impact of negative and positive actions and so on, and they would change over time.
You touched on the point of having to educate some of your employees and getting the right skill sets. I just want to touch on that a little bit more in terms of when you're doing your businesses, you're buying, exiting. Have you come across any situation where you personally felt that your core values weren't aligned? And then how did you navigate that situation?
Oh, most of the time. And we're getting better now because the millennial type where you've had that sustainability education and Gen X onwards, especially more so, things are starting to come right. But when I was buying and selling businesses, most of the time, most businesses, staff, they were absolutely cringeworthy in the processes that they were running, and it was pretty quick and easy for me to turn that around. But I was pretty uncomfortable going into some of them. I had a couple of mechanical workshops and a panel and paint shop. I was building up a bit of an automotive group, and you can probably imagine that demographic wasn't particularly sustainable. Even the panel shop, there's so many plastic bits and pieces on the cars, bumpers and everything. They were all sending it to landfill when all of this stuff is entirely recyclable. And actually you can save a lot of money by recycling it as well. But it's things like that are just cringeworthy from every perspective.
And it's interesting you touched on that, because when we talk about efficiency, sometimes when you talk about the waste versus efficiency, sometimes people think that being sustainable is difficult to be efficient, and the example you showed is a good one. So can you just elaborate a little bit more on some of the things that you might have done in this space and how that looked like for the business?
Yeah, I mean, changing fleets and changing the way that we operated fleets as well to spend less time on the road, have more purpose-fit vehicles. We didn't need heavy gas guzzlers and so on. That was always a pretty straightforward one. Changing the way that we used energy, even the times that we used energy and so on. One company was an engineering company. We found that a lot of the guys preferred to be working early morning, sort of 4 a.m. So, the high energy usage, welding and things like that could be done in the early hours of the morning when the energy grid is running clean. And that coincided with, the logistics and so on. When the drivers want to be on the road, when there's no traffic, everything's more efficient. This all saves money as well. So everything that we were doing sustainability wise was also satisfying co-investors, accountants and so on that we had in the business. But yeah, we were always able to therefore have, get halfway there with the environmental initiatives, purely on a cost and efficiency basis. And then the other half was a bit more of a battle where we had to trade off values, where it would cost to be more sustainable for some of those things. And that's, when we're already halfway there and we've got awards in sight and recognition in sight and customer alignment in sight for the great sustainability work we're doing, we may as well double down on this and be really sustainable, even though that now starts coming at an extra cost, because it was good for business. So, with those extra costs came better customer loyalty, better staff, staff retention, because, we'd built that sense of purpose into our staffing values. So it always worked. It was never easy, but always worth the effort.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to touch a little bit on stability, both inside organizations and also from a leadership perspective. When you deal with so many different issues on a daily basis, it's quite easy to get overwhelmed and a little bit depleted at times. So is there something that you anchor towards on those situations, and how does that look like for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the issues are small issues, and so I let things fall over if they need to, but I make sure that all the core issues, all the big stuff, is where our focus is. And similarly, I spend a lot of time with staff working through when they're in a panic. What is actually the panic about? what options have we got on the table, and what's the logical or flowchart kind of way to see through this to the end. And I guess I apply that to my own rationale as well. You will never get everything 100%, and I don't aim for perfection. I aim for good, and I aim for good lots of the time.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it's so nice to simplify things. Often we do complicate it more than we need to.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the accounting space, right? We often have debates with the accountant at the end of each year about R&D and what's considered in and what's considered out. And sometimes I just say, look, you got 3 questions and we're battling over it. Let's just flip the coin on each of them and call it a day. And, we'll see what happens. Either Callaghan will come back to us and say, no, you can't claim this, or they'll say, yeah, okay. But really, a lot of that stuff doesn't matter if you get it wrong.
Absolutely. In terms of what you're building right now and what the next steps looks like for you, can you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so next steps for CarbonClick, I guess, would be getting a merged group of entities together to drive greater operational efficiency. We need to control our overheads considerably. We've got a lot of opportunities which we need to resource, and that needs funding. It's not a great funding environment, so we're going to have to consolidate with other businesses to create that value add. So that's something that I'm actively working on at the moment. Having failed at trying to get sufficient funding to service some big international contracts. So then I imagine CarbonClick will continue to be a household name. One of the contracts that we have is with the largest travel tech company in the world, and that launches early next year. So that'll see us bringing on a couple of airline customers a month, and which is great. You'll see us more than you already do around the world. I will step at that point into a executive director role. I'll still be full time, but we'll consolidate with a sales and operations strong CEO, and I'll support that CEO. That'll give me a bit of time to start looking at some other boards as well, which is really where I enjoy spending time. Yeah, that's probably the next 5 years, how that's going to look. I don't think I will ever retire.
I love that. In terms of, just before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, what would you like the listeners to think about if there was one advice that you would give them?
Yeah, I mean, so your audience is a diverse audience. So I would say the one takeaway that I would suggest is think about your business with a triple bottom line, and think about the alignment that you can create with staff and with customers by bringing a bit of a sense of purpose. Hey, we're going to not only perform well, but we're also a force for good that is going to leave a positive mark on this planet. That is something that all of your staff can get behind and support. It's something that you will, as a business owner, be able to influence positively and look back on this, with proud eyes.
Thank you, Dave. You've shared so much more than just your story today, and I really appreciate the powerful insights that you've given us. And before we end this, I just want to really thank you on behalf of everyone listening, and hopefully we'll have more of these chats soon. Thanks, Dave, for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time, and well done with these podcasts. They're fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and got as much out of it as I did. As always, if this episode speaks to you, please like, share, and subscribe to Care Beyond Profits. I appreciate you, and until next time, keep caring beyond profits.